Welcome to Defeating the Blank Page podcast, smashing creative blocks, one page at a time. Hosted by JoeyTheJag, creator of Supernova Slam.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Defeating the Blank Page podcast. I'm your host, JoeyTheJag, and this is episode 2. This episode is titled The Manhwa Way, and we're going to be talking about the materials for making manhwa. Now, I haven't gotten the materials yet, but I feel like it's important for us to overcome the fear of the blank page, that our struggle on making art because we have art block or anxiety or something is stopping us from doing our art. Finding the material and understanding the material can give us the edge of knowing what we need to get so we can go get those things and then start drawing. Because once we understand the material, we can understand the way we process the art. That way we can process the art that we are doing. I got myself my coffee right here, which I'm going to take a sip right now. That's good coffee. Got my microphone, my headsets going. I'm ready to begin this episode. This episode is going to be a little different than episode 1. Episode 1 was introduction to what we're going to be doing for this podcast. We're going to talk about the material today and the terminology of some of that material, why the material is important, but I want to give enough to spark and inspire others to push forward and start doing the art. My goal is to document my struggles, my successes, my victories, all that by overcoming my very own webcomic, Supernova Slam. This is one of those reasons why I'm doing the podcast in the first place. I'm going to jump right into the main topic at hand, the Manhwa way. Picture this. You got your sketchbook open, your pen in your hand, and you have an empty page in front of you. It's staring back at you. The blank page is telling you what you're going to do, And that's the blank page of fear. But today we're going to slap it right back with a ballpoint pen. I know you're probably wondering, that's it? A ballpoint pen? Is that how we're going to become great artists, by using a ballpoint pen? So hear me out when I talk about the ballpoint pen. It's really interesting because I never knew anything about the ballpoint pen technique or skills or anything until I found out that manhwa webcomics are done using this method to create amazing webcomics that people read right now. Today's vibe is simple. I'm not going to teach you. If you do learn something, awesome. Proud that you learned something from the podcast. This podcast is just us talking, me talking, and you out there listening, hopefully getting inspired so you can go out there and push beyond your fear of the blank page and start your art by overcoming your art blocks. I'm just here sipping some coffee, sharing stories about tools, techniques, the weird joy of getting ink all over your hand. Because let's be honest, we've all done that, right? Where we have we're drawing with ink pen, and then all of a sudden we look at our hands, and our hands have black ink all over it. And it's what is this monster on my hand? Let's get into the ballpoint pen, and let's make it like it's a love story. MVP of the manhwa style is the ballpoint pen. You can use digital to make webcomics, of course, but for this particular video podcast, we're doing traditional. Down the road, I may interpret digital down the road and other stuff. This is just a way of doing manhwa a certain way. There's going to be so many ways to do webcomics. I mean, there's 10 plus ways to do webcomics. This is one of them. We're learning making traditional comics using the ballpoint pen. The ballpoint pen isn't fancy. It's not expensive. It's just humble stick of potential. You probably used it for, I don't know, signing your bills, writing a shopping list. Did you know it can make entire Manhwa style masterpieces? That's the thing about the ballpoint pen. It's this really cheap art thing that isn't really used as art from the ordinary art supply world, right? Because you use a pencil, and if you mess up, you can just erase. The pen, it doesn't erase. But guess what? The pen does deliver fancy look. One of the things that I always liked was that when you write cursive or handwriting with ink, it looks really nice, in my opinion. Like, it looks really fancy nice, right? Then when you do it with pencil, when you do cursive with pencil, it looks okay. I mean, it's all right. But when you do it with ink, it looks fancy, right? Very expressive. In a similar way, the same could be done with art. So Yakuk, he wrote a book called City Life. He wrote a webcomic called Unlucky Mansion. And you can check it out on Webtoons or webcomics online. It's called Unlucky Mansion. And he used a Signal 0.28 gel-based pen to make that webcomic. Yes, it's tiny. It's a tiny tip of destiny to hatch, shade, breathe life into lines. It's expressive, not perfect. That's the charm. That's what we're here for. We have right there the Signal 0.28 gel-based pen. That's a giveaway. That's what we're going to use to draw. What that does is it helps to create detailed lines. For example, facial expressions. You want to see those tears. Let's say, I don't know, a person close to the main character dies, and you want to see that expression on the face. You want to see the wrinkles. You want to see the tears. You want to see the eyes closing, right? The ballpoint pen does this interesting thing where it gives detail to the look of the art, and it gives realism to the art piece that you drew. It's really, really cool. That's one piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle is two things: brush pens and chill. I know it's like, wait, you're telling me to chill? What? The reason why I say chill is because this should be a relaxing form of creativity. You shouldn't force art. You should let it flow. You should let it freely be expressive on your things, right? You shouldn't like demand anything from it. You should just let it go. When you come into your house and you sit down to draw, just breathe, relax, get your ballpoint pen, and start drawing stars on your page, or lines, or squares, whatever. Just draw something. It can be anything you want. You can draw a worm. You can draw, I don't know, a cat. Even though the cat or the worm may not look good, you yourself know that confidence is the key, because eventually it can be a therapeutic experience. And that is how you start falling in love with defeating the blank page. You overcome the blank page by enjoyment of what you're doing. When you start doing things forcefully, like when you eat pizza every day, eventually you're gonna get tired of eating pizza, right? And next thing you know, your family member or your friends like, hey, let's go eat pizza, and you're like, oh my gosh, no, I'm sorry, I don't like pizza anymore. So it's kind of like that kind of idea when it comes to art. Don't let the art consume you, but also don't let it never happen, right? You got to take the action of making art. Don't take forever, but again, don't rush it. So you got to just relax, breathe, and chill. Now, brush pens. There is a brush pen. This brush pen I'm gonna name is so interesting because it's a little bit pricey, but it's well worth it because it's 2 in 1, and it's the Tombow dual brush pen. So one side is like, I don't know, wielding a sword, and the other is precise little dagger. The one side is more thicker, where the other side is more thinner. And the ink bold strokes or whisper thin outlines. Okay, what that means is that the brushy side, the thick side, does bold strokes. You can see the ink in bold, while the smaller part of the pen does whisper thin outlines. And the whisper thin outlines are so important because they are the erasers of the ballpoint pen material. So there's no erasers on pens, but the way it is, so basically the brush end. So you got the brush end, and then you got the fine liner end. The brush end is the thick part, and the fine liner is the thin part. The fine liner helps to detail a panel to look evenly, and it erases the blotches that happen when you draw with the ballpoint pen. So 2 things now. We have 2 tools, ballpoint pen and the Tombow brush pen. Now, how can we use those pens in order to understand them and apply them to making manhwa? This is how. This is a terminology without the stress. So, what's the difference between inking and outlining? Do you have to know? No, you don't. But if you want to sound smart while sipping coffee, which I am doing right now, here's a quick example. So you got pen touch. The feel of the pen, the vibe of the stroke. Very important. That is so important because the way you use the pen, like if you grace the pen, you're gonna create small, very thin lines, right? That is maybe your intention, right? If you press medium, you're gonna create a sharp color. If you want it dark, you're gonna have to press harder to create that strong line. So pen touch is so important. The way you lift the pen in the air so you can do a certain angle to a circle or some eyes or some nose or some teeth, right? All that is important. And the pen touch is probably the most important because the way you hold the pen, the way you stand, your back against your chair, no slouching, the way you supposed to grab your pen in a certain angle, so your hands on the paper, so you can draw a certain way. So if you are right-handed, you got to draw from right to left. If you're left-handed, you got to draw from left to right, because the angle in which you're drawing creates the different styles of what you're drawing. So if you're doing a certain angle, you're going to see a certain curve, and all of a sudden a bunch of curves are randomly happening. So you want to create smooth lines. You might have to do a small little stroke and lift your pen in the air, and then bring it back down, do another stroke to connect the last stroke you did. That's basically the idea. That is the pen touch. And it's so important to have total control of your pen so that you know where you want those expressive lines to be when it comes to pen touch. The next is inking. Committing to the line. It's like love, but with less pressure. So inking is the way you place the ink on the paper. You can do some soft ink. You can do some light ink. You can do some swift ink. You can do some like small ink lines. So there's different ways of how you can play with the ink in different styles. You can do spirals, you can do zigzags, you can do, circles, based on your flow and your style and your look on how you play with your ink. Ink is vital to how you create foreground and background. How much ink you use in the background in order for a figure to pop out, and how much less you use ink for certain things that doesn't really matter. So if you're inking a car and then the guy, you have to choose what to ink. So you might say, I'm going to ink the car first because the car is going to pop more, and then I'm going to ink the guy or girl, and then I'm going to ink the background. So you have to decide what to ink and how to ink, whether it's more or less based on what you're trying to ink. If there's like a punch coming at someone and that punch makes a connection to another person, right? What is the first thing you're going to ink? Probably the fist punching the person's face. That is the ink that you're going to ink, because that is the main central objective of that art piece. Then you're going to ink the guy punching and then the guy falling back, right? So that's kind of the idea. Just to give like an example, that the inking is based on how you proceed on how you ink. So then you have hatching. Hatching, repeated lines to create shading. And this is super meditative because hatching is one of the interesting things about Manhwa itself, because you can do interesting hatching. Like basically hatching is a bunch of lines that are drawn together to create certain shades. So like if you want light, you might want to shade the top part of let's say you're drawing armor and you want the armor to shine. You're gonna want to shade the top of the armor with hatching, and the bottom you're gonna want to create white hatching. Okay, and that white hatching is going to reflect, and it's going to look like the sun is hitting the armor, and the armor is reflecting the sun because the hatching is pushing the light through the armor. It's a really cool effect if you know how to use it. And so hatching can be done in different ways. Hatching can be done in a bunch of dots. Hatching can be done in swirls. There's so many ways to do hatching to create different effects, and each effect will bring a different dynamic look to whatever it is you're drawing. And that's important when it comes to manhwa. So hatching is the effects of the art piece. It's really, really cool. Like there's moments where there's like an art frame where it's I believe it's a guy, and the guy is talking to this girl, but the guy is hiding something. But the way you know he's hiding something is because half of his face is hatched. So you have his left side of his face, which is visible, and his right side of his face is all hatched. So you don't see his right like face. You see a little bit of his eye, but his eye is almost in shadow, but you can see that he's not looking at the person. He's looking away, almost as if whatever he's hiding, he's trying to keep it that way. But the hatching gives off that weird vibe, like, can you trust this person? Can we trust this person? Because the hatching is giving off that weird, creepy vibe that this person isn't someone you can trust, right? That's kind of like storytelling. Hatching is storytelling. And the way you do the hatching really represents the art piece of what you're doing. It's really, really cool. But then you have gradient. So gradient is a fancy word for shading transition. So you go from dark to light, like a dramatic character arc in anime, if you know what that is. So if you have a bar, let's say you have a bar, the left part of the bar is going to be a dark, a really, really dark color. The mid part of the bar is going to be a little bit less dark, more white, visible white's going to be seen. It's still dark, but there's white parts in the bar. Then the right part of the bar is white. So that's the gradient. And you can do that with different colors that can blend very well with one another in the gradient scale, whatever bar it is. And that helps to give shading transitions. So we have the pen touch, we have the inking, we have the hatching, and we have the gradient. And the importance of those stuff is what I'm going to be using to make my very own webcomic, Supernova Slam. All of this is fuel for my webcomic, Supernova Slam, my very own upcoming webcomic. And the tools we're exploring now, they're like characters in the story. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to start. And that's the lesson here. Start with a pen, with a messy idea, with a podcast playing in the background. The blank page isn't your enemy. It's your scene, partner. And that's pretty much it for the podcast. Just wanted to give you a little bit of the materials we're going to be using, a little bit of the terminology of it. Everything I just said is how we're going to create our very own manhwa, or my very own manhwa. And hopefully, the process of it, you can learn and do your own manhwa. And I'm not just going to do manhwa, I'm going to do my very best to do other types of things and finish projects that I have in my mind. But right now, you got to start with overcoming the fear of the blank page. And the best way to overcome the fear of the blank page is to find the weapons necessary to defeating the enemy. And in this case, the enemy is the blank page. I got material that I'm going to use, so when I go to the store, I know what I want. I know I'm going to get a ballpoint pen. I know that I'm going to get a Tombow brush pen. I know that I am going to, once I get all that, I'm going to go ahead and practice my pen touch, practice inking, practice hatching, practice gradient, and I'm going to practice on drawing. I'm gonna use the pen to help me to draw. There's a lot of exercises that we're gonna use down the road to get to practice. I'm using a book called Drawing Manhwa, and in the book there's exercises, and we're gonna get to that eventually. So that's pretty much it for the episode. So if this episode helped you take even one step closer to drawing something today, then we're doing it right. So like, subscribe, and drop a comment. What's your favorite tool, and what's your favorite webcomic that you recommend to read? Write down in the comments below, and I could do a overview of that webcomic down the road. Most importantly, my main goal of my podcast is to beat art block. That's my main goal. That's the reason why I'm doing this in the first place. So that's pretty much it. Until next time, keep sketching, keep drawing, and never let the blank page win. Don't give up on yourself. Overcome it. Draw anything you want. On a notebook, on a sketchbook, whenever you get the chance. Grab a pen, put it in your pocket, and whenever you feel like drawing, draw something. It could be anything you want to draw. We got to overcome the fear of the blank page and stop making excuses that there's so much going on when we can get 20 minutes, even 5 minutes, even 10 minutes to draw something. And if we have 2 hours to draw something, that's even better. Because that way, we'll know exactly what we're drawing and fighting for. Until then, guys, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Stay bold, keep drawing, and defeat the blank page. See you in the next panel.